Welcome to the ADHD GO Webinar series. This is week 7. We'll be talking about ADHD symptoms at the workplace and at school, which I also call a workplace. We will be talking about your workplace tasks, workplace distractions, other people, and career goals. The workplace is generally composed of 3 different components. There's the tasks that you're asked to do, the environment that you're working in and all the stimuli associated with it, and the other people involved. This could be your coworkers, your boss, teacher, your clients, and so on and so forth. The problems that you'll run into in the workplace are exactly the same as the problems that you run into in your daily life with your ADHD symptoms. There's impulsivity, procrastination, and poor executive function, which could be some of the most frequent sources of stress and anxiety in the workplace for you. But no matter what the symptom is, the heightened consequences and stress that's inherent in a work environment can make those symptoms even worse. Here are some other common problems that people have in the workplace, getting along and having that be successful. Communication and time perception, those always cause problems. But then when you get down to unclear directions, we kind of, poor time management even, we kind of get to some of the things that it might be possible to use the workplace to overcome some of the things on this list. So it's important to remember that despite the fact that you don't have access to the same treatments or the ability to control stress at the workplace that you would, say, at home or in a social situation, but the heightened accountability and the clarity of a lot of rules and processes can really be used as a benefit. Those can actually help because when things are clear to an atypical, often those are the times that you're actually able to succeed. When you have clear instructions and you know exactly what the process is. So try to use some of the structure that the workplace provides to overcome some of these symptoms. Here are some workplace obstacles that might not occur so much in your home or social situations, so it's important to just identify them as being a little bit unique. So the first one here is sapience, and that's your ability to figure out how to behave when you haven't been specifically told. So unwritten rules, your ability to identify and understand unwritten rules. That's sapience, and that occurs a lot in the workplace. It's definitely different responsibilities and you have different expectations on your behavior than in any other environment, but a lot of things of that nature aren't directly communicated to you. So talk to somebody who's in the know, or start writing down in your treatment notebook some of the observations you have about what some of the unwritten rules in your workplace might be. Then there's harassment, and atypicals often struggle with addressing conflict of any kind, and it can be even harder if there's a status or a power dynamic in play, like there often is in the workplace by its very nature. So look at harassment as an opportunity to be direct in an environment with clear rules that you're playing by. You need to document what's going on, describe the problematic behavior to the person who is harassing you, and ask that it stop, or the harasser, even if it's not you who's the target. You need to describe the problematic behavior and ask that it stop. Also, continue to record each instance of the harassing behavior and include dates, because that is going to help you so much when you're able to then take it to somebody and show clearly what the problem is with facts instead of relying on your feelings and saying, I feel, or he made this person feel like, or she. I don't want to gender the harasser, but that is how you should look at harassment, as an opportunity to be direct with someone in an environment where it's understood that there are certain rules of social engagement that we need to play by. Overwork is something that, because of our hyperfocus and sometimes our guilt that rides along with us, that we often tend to overwork ourselves. So make sure that you set limits for how long you're going to work and what you can accomplish in a certain amount of time. The positive illusory bias makes it sound like we can build a castle in a weekend for someone, but it's important that you understand realistically what you can accomplish in a certain amount of time and communicate those boundaries to the person who's assigning you the project. Ask for accommodations where you need them and focus on what you can do, not what you can't. When you're sometimes it can be hard to tell somebody, I can't do this in such and such amount of time. So focus on what you can do. Say, here's what I can get done in that amount of time. And and that's just a more positive way to communicate about it. And it puts the emphasis on what's productive and what's useful. Impulsivity is another workplace obstacle. There is a concept of response inhibition, which is our inability to suppress the immediate reactions we have and choose between several possible responses. Response inhibition is like your mental brakes, and atypical mental brakes seem to be a little bit more slipshod from time to time. So whatever we're working on and whatever workplace communication we're having, it's important to take it slow and follow through on your original intention first, rather than getting distracted and chasing many different rabbits. Communicate clearly with the person. Take it slow. Take it slow with your responses and with the actions if you have some work to do. Controlling your impulsivity generally gets better with age. So if you're younger and you're having a lot of trouble with that, it could get better naturally, but it's also going to take taking a minute to pause, slow down, do your breathing exercises, and really listen to what people say before you respond impulsively. Okay, next we've got wandering communication. Bottom line it. Write down your thoughts before you speak face-to-face. And have an ally, a coworker who you trust, or even somebody outside of the workplace that you trust, review your thought process before you make big decisions. So fight that impulsivity wherever you can, because you're definitely going to start making better decisions. Overcommitment we talked a little bit about in the social slides, but just remember, it's okay to consult your schedule. It's okay to ask for time to think about it and get back to them. It's okay to say no. It's okay to say, I can't do that, but I could do this. Tell people what you can do. Focus on what you can rather than what you can't. And then finally, impatience and unrealistic expectations. You're going to need to get a realistic perspective on how long it takes to reach your goals, whether those are big goals or just small, smaller term, smaller scale projects. Talk to somebody who's been there before. Talk to somebody who's done it. Look at your past work. Time stuff out. Understand how long things are going to take so you don't get impatient. Really when a realistic end time will be, and you can feel good about that estimate, and you won't set unrealistic expectations and communicate that to people in a way that becomes problematic for advancing projects and accomplishing things. Obstacles, performance anxiety. Okay, this is such a big one that I decided to make a slide for it on its own. A history of not doing well at things, failing even, can lead to self-fulfilling prophecy. This is one of those automatic negative thoughts where I feel like I've failed at this a million times before. Of course, I'm going to fail this time. And so you can become anxious just thinking about the task or the test that you have to take. The anxiety itself becomes the focus rather than the reality of the challenges that you have to overcome. That is the test, or that is the task. The anxiety is what becomes the focus instead, and then that can just start growing out of all proportion. So it's important to identify your anxious thoughts and modify them. Visualize the anxiety, accept it, understand that you can control the controllable. Put it in perspective, not only the challenge, but how badly it could go wrong. Don't catastrophize. Think about how small this challenge and your ability to overcome it is, and then zoom out and look at the whole project or your whole life even, or whatever, and see how small this trouble spot is, and how badly you could actually screw it up is actually completely inconsequential, or at least diminished from the problem that your anxiety wants to make it. Then remember to start preparing well in advance. Obviously, getting better calendar habits and checklist habits is really going to help this. Learn different strategies to overcome obstacles. This has a lot to do with resilience. So you shouldn't just know one way to get to the grocery store. I mean, you should have many ways to solve a single problem, and the more ways you can come up with, the more likely you are to get what you needed from the effort that you put in. Seek accommodations. I don't always recommend this in the workplace, but if you know how your brain works and you're able to say, I have trouble keeping things in mind, so I'm just going to take notes during this meeting, then you have set a clear example, and you've asked for you've communicated clearly, and you've also asked for the accommodation of allow me to take notes during this meeting. So, and that's without divulging or disclosing your condition specifically to anyone. It's just about self-awareness and communicating that. Arrive early. Early is on time. Yeah, this is a big one. Try not to get careless about time. Always arrive early, because when we tend to indulge the one last thing thought before we leave one task and switch to another, so we're constantly late. And because we can't estimate how long things take, and we tend to completely neglect the length of time that it will take to even travel between two different places to do different tasks. So it's very common for atypicals to be late. So strive to be early, and then you'll be on time. Then grab low-hanging fruit first to build confidence. This is just about small wins. We talk about that. Small wins. Anything that you can do to start to build your confidence and your momentum, it's going to make everything else easier. So don't start with the hardest, biggest thing. And appreciate the small wins. Work with your symptoms. Okay, so having a focused distraction, like I talked about, notes and meeting, a stress ball, moving, having a walking meeting or a lunch meeting, that can provide you like a little bit of stimulation that can actually help make that meeting more novel and more memorable, keep you engaged better. Walk and talk, just talked about. Short breaks. This is like the Pomodoro sprints. Do something for 25 minutes tops, and then take a short break. And know what you're going to do for that break. What gives you a nice relieving little palate cleanser? Is it a short walk? Is it 10 push-ups? Is it checking Twitter real quick? And I mean real quick. You got to be disciplined about that. But taking short breaks and having short breaks, buffer times to transition between things built into your estimates for how long things will take is really important, so that you don't stress out when time gets crunched because you didn't leave buffer times or short breaks. You need those. They happen. Check in with coworkers. This is just like checking in with your significant other, but not all the same things are appropriate. There are different expectations and boundaries. It'll take sapience to figure out what those are. But checking in with coworkers about how projects are going, what they need, what you need, that can really strengthen relationships and make sure you avoid setbacks to projects and therefore relationships at the workplace. Ask for things in writing. You need to have a paper trail and you need to have clear directions. Clear directions will make it possible to do whatever it is without procrastinating, and having a paper trail is going to make it so you don't have to constantly ask, oh, what was it that was required to have this project be done? You have it there in writing, and so it's much less likely that you'd be careless about what needs to be done and need to ask, your superior or your coworkers for that information that they've already communicated. Repeat it back to clarify it. Yeah, when people are talking to you, just say what they said in your own words and just have them confirm. And that can be really helpful for showing that you're engaged and also solidifying the memory of what you need to focus on. Coworkers, clients, and workspaces. So with coworkers, you're going to be focusing on projects, and the expectations and the boundaries are going to be that of the workplace. With clients, your expectations and your boundaries are different than that of what happens between you and your coworkers. And the focus of the relationship is about the project, but not doing the project, just about the product, the finished product. So don't focus on the back of house stuff and how the sausage is made. Focus on the product, the finished project, the work, and always communicate positively and confidently about what you can do, not what you can't. Just leave that off the table. Then finally, workspaces. This gets back to a lot of the stuff that is that we talk about in the home module. It's just important to have out only the materials you need for the project you're working on and reduce clutter and distractions as much as possible. Project planning. So the first part of planning a project is awareness. You need to understand what you are trying to accomplish. Brainstorm many possible ways to accomplish that goal so that you have some resilience, so you can pivot if you need to. Consider what might help. Consider what help you could find to achieve your goal. So this could be resources that are physical. This could be people. This could be ideas, research. Whatever might help, consider that and anticipate the obstacles that you're going to encounter and different ways that you could overcome those obstacles. They'll be pretty clear from the outset. Chances are you're not doing something that's never been done before. And if you are, you can still anticipate some of the obstacles. Determine milestones and prioritize them. So this is going from the completed project deadline and working back to set milestones that you'll want to accomplish in the time leading up to the deadline. Then plan backwards and set those milestones. That's your awareness of the project needs. Now, let's talk about the intention of finishing your project or your task. So break those milestones into smaller tasks that you can start putting on each day and add those tasks, the task lists under the milestone events on your calendar. Create a to-do list for your next milestone, the next one that's coming up from today, and choose a reasonable number of tasks from that to-do list and put those on your checklist for tomorrow for work. And those tasks ought to be refined down to the smallest, simplest actions. The smallest thing that you can do. If you're worried about doing a task, you haven't made it small enough. So keep breaking it down until it's manageable and not overwhelming. Next, we have action. Action starts with gathering the materials that you need and then executing whatever actions are required to complete the task. Make sure that you evaluate your progress by looking at the time that you need, timing yourself for tasks, recording your results in your treatment notebook or in the calendar if you haven't finished things. Reward yourself when things are done. Adjust deadlines if that needs to be done when you evaluate your progress, and communicate your progress to the other team members. Let people know when things are finished and what they can expect. Barriers to organization. So organizing is obviously vital to both the planning and the execution of a task. So make sure that you're not rushing through things. This is especially important for the planning part. Rushing through it is going to stop you from getting all of the possible materials and understanding the obstacles, and you are so much more likely to run into a failure. Impulsively placing things anywhere. Again, this is not appropriate in the workplace. We need to really be disciplined about where we put things, because it's a shared space typically, and even if it's not, we need to show that we respect the heightened sort of rules that the workplace demands. Poor classification and categorization of items. This is kind of about prioritization. Constantly overcommitting is going to cause you to not be able to do things, not be able to finish everything you wanted to, or to overwork, and then leaving no time to plan or organize. We talked about that at the top. Distractibility, feeling overwhelmed by setbacks, procrastination and indecisiveness, shoot then aim approach to problem solving. Of course, this is how atypicals tend to do things. We let our impulsivity drive, and we'll take an action before really considering it and making a plan. So make sure you aim before you shoot. It's very important. And then not collecting necessary information. Yeah, this is all typically a project of rushing and failing to plan. Not considering all possible solutions. Build that resilience by having many ways to solve your problem, get what you want. Lacking the patience to develop a plan, struggling to muster attention because it's something you don't want to do, and impulsively, you don't have the curiosity to push you forward, and impulsively going with the first thing that comes to mind. Okay, now we're talking about communication. I specifically think of this as far as communicating with your clients. So, personal issues, off the table, not appropriate. Talk about it with your therapist or your significant others, your friends. Personal issues are not appropriate for the workplace. And the more mysterious you can be, the better it'll work out for you in that regard. Next, small talk. Small talk is great. It greases the skids and lets people know that you are invested in having a good working relationship. Like you will put in the effort to do the bare minimum and make things pleasant, which people like. Forwards. This is a great way to do small talk. It's also sometimes good for talking to relatives. Everybody needs a little small talk. But those are talking about your family, talking about your occupation, talking about recreation and dreams. So how many kids do you have? How your parents doing? Then occupation is, what do you do for work? How's that going? Recreation, talking about how you like snowmobiling or water skiing or whatever it is. You collect bottle caps. And dreams, talking about your aspirations and your visions for the future. So constantly be going through and building forwards. Constantly be going through this. It's limitless. You can continue to go letter to letter in your head and ask them a question about these things, and that will be good small talk. And then there's always the weather, but weather's boring. Remembering names. I talked about this in the mnemonic devices section, but I really like to use the first letter of a person's name and link that onto an image of something else. So the example that I use, you could Timmy the Turtle, you could just imagine a turtle, and then you're like, I'll never forget that guy likes to be called Timmy. then you can also rhyme it with something. So Brian could rhyme with Fryan. And so I always imagine Brian cooking bacon in a frying pan, and now that's just in my head, and I know that this guy's Brian, and he's frying Brian. So that's a good way to remember names, and people love it. People say that to another person, their name is the most beautiful word in any language, And I think that's true from my experience with people. Calling people by their name really makes them feel good, or at least like you're engaged with them. And relationship assuredness. You don't let a bunch of emotional whirlpools and resentments kind of scuttle your relationships with anybody. Don't try to mind read other people and think what they're thinking or feeling about you. Be confident in your relationships with people. Know that you take responsibility for how you want your relationships to be, and be positive and just communicate with people with assuredness and confidence. More communication tips. Remember that even when you're not saying anything, you're communicating. Silence is a communication. Non-communication is a communication. It says something about you. Be aware of your language. Be aware of your tone and volume. Match the other person's level of emotion and personal disclosure. This goes back to a concept called mirroring. People tend to like it when they perceive another person as like them. So if you kind of mimic another person's gestures or body posture or body language or tone or the words that they use back to them, then they're going to inherently like you better and enjoy communicating with you. Avoid assumptions. Again, no one can read minds. If you have a question about what somebody's trying to communicate to you, just ask them. That's much better than assuming that you know and then jumping off from there. Repeat what someone has said in your own words, paraphrase it. This is going to help you remember things and shows that you're engaged. Be patient. Take regular pauses in conversation and become comfortable with silence. If you can sit in silence where nobody feels like they have to talk, but you're still comfortable being in the room with somebody, that is a good friend. That's family. That's a good sign that you are close to this person, and whatever starts to come out of your mouth after those long silences is going to be some of the best communication you ever have. Respect boundaries. So don't intrude on others' personal space. You don't need to ask them about personal stuff. They will let you know when they're comfortable, and hopefully you will be able to communicate with other people what you feel uncomfortable talking about. So know what those boundaries are for you, and try to figure out what they are for the people who are close to you, or even in the workplace. Wait to make major decisions. This one's obvious. Consult people that you trust. Write down the pros and cons. See the good in other people. People are generally good, and if we all go around thinking, just imagining that everyone else is having good thoughts and having a good time, that's a better world to live in, and will make better, more supportive choices because of it, that have positive impacts on people. Stand firm when things go wrong. There's no reason to get defensive when you feel pushback. Again, this is a high status thing, and in the workplace, more than anywhere else, you will be rewarded for having high status. So stand firm on your convictions, your idea, even when things go wrong, and stick to your plan. Surround yourself with positive people. Obviously, you don't get a choice a lot of the time in where you're working or who you're around when you're at a workplace. So this can be a little more difficult, but it's important to keep in mind, because in most places you can limit being around certain people. And if that means you have to get a new job because everybody in your industry drives you bonkers, then it's important to look at that too. Or if you want to start, you want to go into business for yourself, so you only have to be around people that you approve of because you're the boss. Next, Let other people know when you're switching topics so your thoughts are easier to follow, because we tend to be reading minds and thinking everyone's on the same page as me, even while we're bouncing around. And sometimes we're aware of it, but it doesn't cause us to slow down and bring people up to speed in a way that isn't awkward, or worse yet, diminishes the listener in some way. So just make sure that when you're switching topics, you make that clear before you just go roughshod into the next big idea. Acknowledge when you interrupt others and apologize. This can be so important. Take notes during a conversation if you feel like you'll be overcome with anxiety because you're going to forget the great ideas that you're having while that person is talking, or there are many statements that you want to refute and you just want to quickly jot down a note about what it is that they said that you took issue with. Just don't interrupt, and when you do interrupt, make sure you apologize and do better. Speak in short sentences that communicate clearly as if you were being interviewed on TV. Yes, this is exactly right. And a lot of times on TV shows, I suppose, you see someone telling a long story, the guest is going to try to delight the audience with a long story that he tells. But this is more of, the workplace is not necessarily the time for that. This is short answers like you're being interviewed on TV for a segment about the hurricane that's coming. So keep your answers short. Just give people the facts and tell them exactly what they need to do for the project to move forward. Next, writing your thoughts down solidifies them and makes them easier to express. Yes. Write things down, especially before you're going to confront someone or propose a big idea, before you meet with a client, or before you go into a big meeting where you have a presentation. Of course, write things down, or even if you don't have a presentation, just write down what you want to express and set a mutual agenda for the conversation you're going to have from the outset. Let them know what you want to cover. Think before you speak. Again, just slow down. Ask yourself, is this feeling or thought true? Is it important? And is it even relevant to this moment in this conversation with this person, right? So think before you speak, evaluate those thoughts. Don't let your impulsivity drive. Keep the other person's purpose in mind. Oh my Lord. Make sure that the other person is getting what they want. You're working together. So whatever it is that they want, just always kind of be coming back to that. It's about listening and finding compromise and moving forward together. Show interest with your body language, of course, shoulders onto the person, looking at them, responding, with either your body language or your vocal cues. And don't multitask while talking. Definitely don't be on your phone while you're talking to somebody. Note taking is good, especially if you make people aware that that's what you're doing. Stress ball, but other kind of daydreaming stuff and multitasking is not going to make the other person feel like you're listening. It's not going to help you, and it's not going to help them. Express confidence and positivity all the time. Ask rather than tell. This can be a great way to help people feel self-motivated. If you're in a managerial position, don't tell people what they have to do, but get them to arrive at what they have to do by just asking them about the project, and you'll be able to both independently decide, okay, here's the best way to split up this work. Then choose the right place, time, and style of conversation setting. So, of course, you need to be, if you're having a sensitive conversation, you want to go into a private office, or if you are talking about something that is unrelated to work, maybe you take a walk around the building with whoever it impacts. But you understand there's just a place, a time, and a style of conversation that's good for everything, and try to minimize any competing stimuli. Pause if you feel emotional. We get that. Sometimes have a panic word, or sometimes just say, I'm getting flooded. Let's just take 5. Be clear about follow-up. Respond with an email once you're done talking to somebody, having your meeting, or be clear about the next steps of the project, either in that email or in your face-to-face communication in some way. Be gracious and speak diplomatically. Of course, you want, in the workplace, you want to have good, solid relationships with people. You want to work together well. So always be gracious of what other people contribute, and don't try to pin anything on anybody. Don't try to point your fingers too much. Just talk about the facts of what is happening with your work. And then in confrontations, maintain respect and dignity. Be direct. If you're direct and honest and use I statements and listen to the other person, conflicts are now something that you can approach and feel good about, because you're headed towards a resolution, and you are in control. Pay attention, listen with your body, choose the right environment, use a focused distraction, and set parameters for the duration and topics to be covered. I'll just talk about the last one because I've already sort of done the first 3, but the duration, this is about having bookending times. So here's when we start the conversation and here's when we end the conversation. This is going to be a 10-minute conversation, so I can sort of not have anxiety during the meeting that during the interaction that, oh man, this is going to take forever, and just the kind of blanket forever that who knows how long this is going to take. I don't have to be vague in that way, so I can simply set a start time and an end time, so I don't have to have that anxiety during the actual conversation. Improving communication. Reflect on your recent conversations, interactions with people, and commit to change. And we'll be going through this a bit for your ADHD and the workplace plan. But this is really what it's all about, just reflecting on how things have been going, where the stumbling blocks are, what's going well, what your strengths are, and then how you could improve things. Follow through. Don't overcommit. Consider your other obligations. Ask yourself if you have the skills and information necessary. Check your current obligations before a meeting, and don't volunteer for something before doing so. And don't do things just to be nice. So I've already covered the first ones here, but as far as following through, the biggest thing is not to overcommit and doing things that you're excited about doing, or at least getting some curiosity and pumping yourself up in some way for how you could do it better or faster, or getting some kind of curiosity to motivate yourself if it's something that you are not naturally inclined to want to do. Don't do things in the workplace just to be nice. That's not what this is about. This is business. This is getting projects done, and you need to respect your time. Make yourself a timeline. Start, middle, end of project. Then it could be easier to put it onto the calendar, but just make yourself a quick timeline. Let others know if you're not going to be able to deliver on time. This goes back to letting people down in the workplace because you didn't meet deadlines that you set is one of the worst things that you can do in the workplace, right? It derails projects. All the other timelines, the intricate new moving parts need to be reset and recalibrated. You need to communicate and you need to deliver. So just be realistic with how much you can get done. Don't volunteer the services of someone else without checking first. Don't say, yeah, I can't do that coding, but you know who's great is Dan over there. He'll do it. Because, that's just not good communication practice. It's very inconsiderate. Let people know if you won't have time to do something, or negotiate a way to reduce your other responsibilities so that you do have time. Let them know there's no way I can finish that report before Friday, but if I didn't have to do the morning meetings, then I would definitely be able to get it done. So talk about what you're capable of and ask for accommodations, even if that means negotiating some of your other responsibilities. Allow yourself some transition time to pause and review your progress before starting a new activity. Transition time is just important no matter what you do in it. You don't necessarily, pausing and reviewing the progress you've made is an important reflection, and it can give you a sense of how long things are going to take going forward, or even to get to that point again, but it's really just having transition time to reduce stress and to help you to facilitate your ability to switch your focus between different tasks. And then finding the right path. You need to have a job that you enjoy, that you care about, you're passionate about it, and it's good for your strengths. So there's a lot of articles out there about different jobs that might be good for atypicals, and I haven't really found any that I thought, oh yeah, this is definitely it. But anything that involves a lot of soft skills, or something that you want to hyper focus on all the time, those are good matches for people with ADHD. And by the way, by soft skills, I mean, communication, interpersonal sort of communication is one big soft skill. And there's less and less people who are willing and able to just interact with other people these days. So it's important to cultivate that, and atypicals tend to be really good at that once we overcome some of our emotional obstacles like rejection-sensitive dysphoria. So, but a lot of people find that as an atypical, the best possible job is to be your own boss because you march to the beat of a different drummer. So that's fine. You can set your own schedule. You can make all the rules. You can decide who you want to interact with as your own boss. Just remember that being an entrepreneur is also an enormous amount of freedom and responsibility. So it can also be very difficult. I think the key is to gather a good team and align your purpose, communicate well with those people, and move your projects forward. But being an entrepreneur can be a great choice for a lot of atypicals once their symptoms are managed. Characteristics of jobs suited to atypicals: fast pace with a varied task each day. You can move around or travel during the day. That sounds great. Intellectually stimulating or challenging so that you hyper-focus and you care. There are firm due dates for projects. This is the clarity which is going to overcome a lot of your procrastination and insecurity. You receive frequent feedback and expectations are clear. This is kind of a similar thing, just making sure you're on the right track all the time. It's nice to have that feedback. The schedule is flexible. Of course, that always is going to help us. And there's immediate reinforcement for a job well done. We got to get that dopamine, and sometimes we have trouble feeling rewarded for certain tasks. Therefore, that immediate and overt reinforcement, if we can get that from our workplace, then that's obviously going to keep us happy in that job, whatever it is, in that role. I talked a little bit about entrepreneurship, so I'll skip that slide. Accommodation, disclosing your condition. So again, I don't necessarily recommend disclosing your condition, but you will want to make an appointment with your teacher or supervisor to discuss your condition. And beforehand, you will assemble persuasive reasons for accommodation and base that on your shared goals. Keep the other person's interests in mind. The teacher wants you to learn best. The employer wants you to work and be as productive as you can be. So think about how the accommodations you're asking for can advance their goal as well as your own. Confirm your needs by stating what you'd like to accomplish. Obviously, just tell them this is how I think these accommodations are going to help. Clarify what compromise you are asking for and justify your needs, and then reach an agreement with them and record the details by following up by email so you do have a written record of that. Forward that to anyone who might need to be in the loop. But again, disclosing your condition can open you up to a lot of criticism based on your condition, and a lot of that can be disingenuous. If you're in a toxic workplace, this can be a really bad idea. So generally, I advocate for talking about your condition and how you operate best and what you can do as a person, and and you can ask for accommodations, but you don't necessarily need to attach that overtly to your ADHD, because then people can use that for all sorts of other stuff. Okay, so as far as the laws on this go, the Americans with Disabilities Act prevents employers from discriminating against people based on things like medical conditions. But again, this is kind of a gray area. It does involve a lawsuit if you feel like you've been discriminated against. There are some legal requirements for accommodations they have to provide, but again, all of this stuff is, these are not things that I would rely on unless you've already talked to or been told by your HR department that they're able to accommodate you in this way. Certain things like, flexible weekends might be negotiable, but again, this is not something you necessarily need to disclose your condition and put pressure on the institution in that way in order to receive. They might be able to be flexible just because you said, I would appreciate it if you were flexible about this. Workplace tips. Take frequent breaks. Replace fluorescents, they can buzz. And in fact, you just want to evaluate your workplace environment like you do your home environment. Go through all your senses, probably not taste, but definitely touch, feel, sight, and sound. Touch and feel. Anyway, the other senses, and go through and evaluate where the distractions are in your environment. Allow extra time for meetings and events so you don't overbook yourself. Leave that buffer time or transition time between tasks. Get an office that's free of distractions. If you have a choice or that's available, that's a great accommodation. Get an office that's situated in a better place, maybe a quieter place in the office. Avoid cubicles, unavoidable distractions. Nobody likes a cubicle. I think that's changing. I think cubicles are sort of on the way out in office architecture. Keep your hands busy by taking notes during a meeting. We talked about those intentional distractions. Insist on clear deadlines. Break everything into smaller chunks. If you're overwhelmed and you feel like you can't start, you just haven't made it small enough. Schedule challenging work for when you are sharpest. Doing things in the morning, eating your frogs first, and then remember to account for sort of your brain fog. Maybe early afternoon you want to be making phone calls so that you have people to hold you accountable and you're a little bit more actively engaged. Buddy up with a coworker for accountability. This can be great, and it can be naturally how a lot of projects work. Get to work 15 minutes early to prepare for the day. Again, early is on time. And yeah, being prepared for the day is going to just make you feel like you're 8 feet tall. Ask for flexibility so you can alter your workday's start and end times. This can be great. If you always get to work late and always leave late, just say, hey, I think this would work out better if I just got here at 10 a.m. and left here at 6 p.m. Does that work for you, boss? And, just chances are that you can get that accommodation, and it could really help your daily routine. Use time management apps and alarms, to-do lists, obviously, alarms. Employ a color-coded organization system. This is great for calendars and notebooks. Schedule meetings with your boss to make sure you're on track. A lot of us have to go through, quarterly reviews, that sort of thing. So sometimes this happens just by nature of the environment. But if it doesn't, make it happen, because it's always important to have that feedback, and you could be thinking about advancement and your career goals. Spell check everything twice. Everything needs to be spell checked. Make sure everything is spell checked. Oh, man, because it's always funny to see a typo, and the person is always less credible when they have a typo. Carry a small notebook for your popcorn thoughts, your daily checklist, and just to jot down notes during meetings. The small notebook is indispensable. And set time limits for email and other tasks that might lead to distraction. Email is the big one, because then you're on your computer and it's easy to bounce off onto something else. So just set a time limit for how long you check your email for every day. Take time at the end of the day to organize and prepare for tomorrow. Obviously, this is your evening check-in, and you could have an evening work checkout, or your evening checkout. You got to have a work checkout. Separate the setup from the task. Organizing your materials is different from doing the task, so make sure that everything's ready, and when you start the task, consider that your start time. And take a break after you organize the materials. Take a quick break, take a little walk, and then come back and start the task, because you've already done a task, you're a little bit fatigued, so make sure you separate the setup from the task. Use rewards as good stress. So yeah, if you get asked to go out to hang out, say that you have to reach a certain point in your work, or that you need to cancel. And this can often put the right kind of pressure on you that's not panic, but it's that urgency that can create hyperfocus, because you really want to go out, and you don't want to let that friend down. But you have told them that you must cancel if you don't finish what you need to do. So they are prepared for that possibility. Set a realistic deadline and an aspirational deadline. So I often wasn't able to set very good deadlines because I wanted to say it's going to be done by the end of the day or tomorrow at the latest. But really, the projects I'm talking about are going to take a week, 3 days minimum. And so it's important that I tell people what my realistic deadline is, but I can set that aspirational deadline for myself on the calendar. I can say, no, this is going to be done by tomorrow. Just communication is key. It must be clear and it must be accurate. So give the realistic deadline to someone, but know that, oh no, I'm going to have it done by tomorrow. And then enjoy over-delivering, under-promising and over-delivering to that person. Make actions concrete with SMART goals. We talked about SMART goals in the behavior section, so check that out. SMART goals are great. Create safe, high stakes. So I read about this from another blogger who said she doesn't take a laptop charger to the coffee shop and lets the draining of the battery motivate her to finish her work. And I thought that was I've done that before, and I think it's another really great way to put some kind of stakes so that you switch into hyperfocus. A little bit of urgency is created with that. Then understand what prevents you from following through and work around it. Again, you got to reflect on your results and always be striving to improve. Okay, so those were our workplace tips. Let's talk about school tips specifically. First, get the books you need and read them. Get all the books that are in the course syllabus, get anything that you need to prepare for what you're doing, and read them. Read the syllabus. Get prepared for the class. Go to every class. These are the bare minimum things that you can do to succeed in the class, and in my experience, most things you can get through if you do this bare minimum. If you just get the books, read the syllabus, go to class, take notes, you're just being present for the work of being a student. You can write your assignments down in your treatment notebook or a planner, on your calendar. Make a study schedule for tests a few days out from the test. And do the homework and readings. Be prepared. You can't study and party. I mean, it's true. It's true from experience. You can pass classes and party. You can look like a model student and party, but you are not getting the full benefit out of being a student and the studying. Your partying will affect your studying. It will. It will have a direct effect, even if you don't want to admit it to yourself. Talk to the instructors. This can be great because they really want you to succeed. They're invested in it. Think of questions that'll expand your knowledge and spark your curiosity. Ask them what they're curious about and why they got into the field. It can be really, really interesting and switch you on to some things at the sort of corners of your own knowledge. Don't procrastinate. Yes, don't be insecure about things. Get clear directions for what you need to do, and address the feelings that would cause you to not do the project, whether that's getting spun out emotionally about something that's distracting you, or just not having the curiosity to get motivated to start. Just figure that out, and then you can address it. So then take breaks. We've talked about how important this is, especially during studying, because at some point you can't put any more into your brain. Your brain needs time to absorb and digest information. Pick a good place and time to study. Of course, I need that library environment, but everybody's different. So, but just find a place that's clear of distractions and won't, and it maybe has some accountability. Start with the hard stuff when you're sharpest. Eat your frogs first. Make sure you understand the assignment. Clarify. Sit in a comfortable chair. Work with others when appropriate. That can help with your accountability, even if it's studying with others. No one is making you gain knowledge. You get to. Again, this is the power of choice and your attitude. Enjoy being a student and enjoy growing your brain's thought tree. Just really have fun. Have fun getting more knowledge and researching things. It's a privilege. Reflect on what you are learning and make a conscious effort to recall the information. Flashcards really help. I studied languages, so flashcards were a big deal. All right, workplace treatment plan, school treatment plan. Find a target symptom. Find something that is holding you back. Find an area of the workplace that you want to improve, or in your schooling that you want to improve. Come up with a reason, how you're going to do it, and the tactics, the actions that you're going to take to really make change in your life. That concludes the workplace and school module of ADHD. I'm going to take questions from the emails that I've received, and then we are going to get questions from the chat, and then we'll talk about whatever's on your mind. So let me get a look at those first questions.